6 GB of RAM and 128 GB of memory at a bargain price tag of just around 200 euros. That's what the Vernee X offers. But let's face it, a lot of memory alone does not make a good phone. So in this review you will find out whether the Vernee X is really a bargain or just another piece of Chinese crap. The Vernee X was provided to us by GearBest. The link to the shop can be found in the video description below. At first glance you might think that the Vernee X is entirely made of metal, but that's actually not the case. The antenna lines are for decoration purposes only. Instead, the body consists of one piece of plastic. This is not a disadvantage though, because the build quality is just fine and thus the smartphone doesn't look cheap. In fact, it feels good and comfortable in the hands. With 202 grams it is a bit heavier, but of course that was to expect considering the large battery. The Vernee X is relatively sturdy and can only be bent with a lot of force. The sturdiness of course contributes to the quality impression, just like the hardware keys on the right hand side, which are firmly seated in their place. A nice thing is that the camera does not protrude too much from the back. The fingerprint scanner, however, could well be a little far away from the camera module. The display is 5.99 inches in size, based on IPS LCD technology, fully laminated and operates at 2160 by 1080 resolution. Vernee uses a full view panel in 18:9 format, which extends over almost the entire front and, despite its size, enables a relatively compact device. The image is beautifully sharp and the colors seem just right. Nevertheless, the panel lacks a tad of vividness and the contrast could be a little better on factory settings. However, this can be compensated by using Mediatek mirror vision, which was kindly implemented by Vernee. This offers contrast optimization as well as various options for adjusting the image to your likings. The viewing angles of the display are quite good. The only downside here is a reddish tint when viewed from the left or right side. The screen can get very bright and can be used without any problems during bright sunshine. However, the automatic brightness control is too aggressive. Even inside a building at daylight, it sets the brightness to almost 100%, which wastes a lot of energy. The touchscreen packs a surprise because it supports up to 10 touch points and works pretty well. There is just a slight input delay, but that isn't really disturbing. During the testing period, the screen glass remained free of scratches and it is coated with a grease repellent coating, which makes it easy to clean and increases the gliding properties. Unfortunately, Vernee has messed up the performance. The Vernee X packs some good specs. The Helio P23 should provide a smooth user experience and potentially reaches up to 63,000 points in the Antutu benchmark. However, this is not the case with the Vernee X. In Antutu, only 53,724 points are achieved, which is clearly not enough. Now that would be half as bad if you wouldn't notice it. But you do. The Vernee X just doesn't run smoothly, especially when you switch back and forth between several apps and it just keeps stuttering. Now of course you can decide to live with that, but you definitely don't have to in this price range. There are tons of other devices, sometimes even with weaker processors, that run much snappier. It's a bit surprising that you don't notice the bad optimization during gaming. Even more demanding titles can be played at an acceptable frame rate and that doesn't change even with longer gaming sessions. What you shouldn't do is to buy the Vernee X just because of the 6 GB of RAM. You just can't take advantage of it. The RAM management is too aggressive and closes apps in the background when more than 15 of them are open. If 64 GB of storage is all you need, then it is recommended to buy the 4 GB RAM model, which costs only about 150 euros. The extra bucks for the 128 GB model are only worth it if you really need that large storage. Sensor-wise, the Vernee X packs everything you need, and this includes a compass and a gyroscope, and both of which work without any problems. The fingerprint sensor on the back works very well and is suitable for everyday use, even if it's not the fastest. The opposite is true for the face unlock feature. As with the Ulefone Power 3 or the Mediatek S2 Pro, this feature is useless. First, it is unreliable and there is no fallback to the fingerprint sensor, and second, the feature can be easily tricked with a photo of the owner and is therefore completely insecure. A status LED is present and located above the display in case of notifications, however, it only lights up in blue and cannot be configured. An OTG-compatible USB Type-C port is available for data transfer, but it only works according to the USB 2.0 standard. On the Vernee X, the in-house Vernee OS is used once again. This is an attempt to build a better stock Android, which remains unchanged in appearance, but is extended by useful features. The first steps of Vernee OS were very promising, but Vernee has not developed the system since its release until today, and this is 1 year by now. But at least the base is kept more or less up to date, so the Vernee X runs Android 7.1.1 and an Android Oreo upgrade was already announced. OTA updates are supported and so far there have been 3 updates, however this makes it all the more disappointing that the security patch level is still dated to November 2017. The Vernee X comes with just a few pre-installed Google apps and the Touch keyboard. The Google Play Store works out of the box without any issues, and multi-language is available and seems complete except for a few Vernee specific settings. What is very annoying about the Vernee X are the notifications, which usually arrive only when you open the apps manually after waking up the phone. This is also the case if you have not closed the apps before standby. Whatever the cause of that is, let's hope Vernee will fix it. What's very surprising is how well the phone performs in mobile networks. Even in weak areas, the signal is comparably good and band 20 LTE is also supported. Unfortunately, Wi-Fi has some issues. For some reason, the phone does not automatically switch between 2.4 and 5 GHz networks, which often leads to extremely low data rates and even short interruptions. Only when you switch Wi-Fi off and on again, the phone connects to the right network. GPS works fairly well, the signal strength looks good and GPS tracking except for very slight deviations did work very well even inside a pocket. There were also slight deviations when navigating near tall buildings, however this never had a negative effect on navigation during our test. The media speaker of the Vernee X sounds pretty crappy. Starting from 70% of the maximum volume, it starts to scratch and distort, which is very unpleasant. The phone does not have a 3.5mm jack, instead there is a Type-C to 3.5mm adapter included. This one sounds okay, but we have already tested better ones. When talking on the phone, it is noticeable that the earpiece sounds quite dull, while your own voice is crystal clear on the other end. This applies to voice over LTE use as well, but this is just a small flaw and does not lead to any issues understanding each other. The dual camera on the back, which, contrary to Vernee's claims, only uses a 13MP Sony IMX258 main sensor and a Galaxy-Core GC0310 VGA secondary sensor, is as oh so often a fake that is not really used. The bokeh mode is simply useless, as you can see. The results are much better in normal mode. At daytime, the phone actually delivers usable photos with sufficient sharpness and details. The pictures also look good in terms of color. Sure, there are better cameras out there, but you really can't complain when you look at what a lot of other cheap phone makers deliver. It's just low light, the camera doesn't get along well. Unfortunately, not even the flash does help much there, but this should be no surprise. Believe it or not, the front camera is also a cheater. Instead of 13MP, it packs a 8MP sensor which is interpolated to 13MP. The secondary sensor once again is a GC0310 VGA sensor instead of the advertised 5MP sensor. And here again the dual camera is a fake. Whatever the blur mode tries to produce there, it definitely isn't a bokeh effect. In normal mode, however, the front camera produces usable daylight images, but it doesn't like poor lighting either. You can record videos in Full HD using the main camera. CAF is available, EIS unfortunately not. Quality is mediocre. The front camera is not suitable for recording videos since it only supports 480p resolution. The 6200 mAh battery easily delivers 1.5 to 2 days of battery life, but is not fully utilized due to the poor optimization. A maximum of 11 to 12 hours screen on time can be reached, but with better optimization this could be a lot more. The promised fast charging doesn't work unfortunately. It takes a whopping 4 hours to charge the battery from 20 to 100%. The Vernee X charges very slowly from 20% to 30%, then takes up some speed to 80%, but then slows down extremely again and takes a whopping 2 hours to fill the last 15%. Conclusion: the Vernee X is a perfect example of how the Chinese desperately try to create specs fireworks on the paper, but forget to deliver a usable product while doing so. The best specs are of no use if they are not made use of, and that is exactly what happens here. Performance issues, Wi-Fi issues, notification issues, a fake dual camera and non-functioning fast charging. Is that worth 200 euros? Well, most probably not. And that's the end of this review. A shop link and more information is located down in the video description. I was Christopher for CMM. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.